Hello everybody. Today is the 20th of October and it is time for another video, and today's video will be on Catasetum dormancy. It is that time of year. Many of you may already be having your plants start to go dormant, or if at the very least they're finishing up their growth of the year. So it's time that we address this once more because some of you may have concerns, and my understanding of this has grown yet again as another year has gone by, so I figured I'd make another video on it. So, as you can see here, a lot of my catasetums are still pretty much fully leafed out. Some of them are some of these over here are starting to show signs of going dormant, like this Catasetum right here. This is got like the lower leaves are starting to yellow. Others still don't really show any signs of doing that anytime soon, like this one. And so I figured, and this one here is Catasetum Susan Fuchs by Karen Armstrong. But others, like these over here, have pretty much already gone dormant or are almost totally dormant, so I moved them over here. We'll just take a look at a few of them. I have to remove the dead sheaths off this one. But this is Cycnodes Jumbo Puff. This one went dormant. Actually, this was like the first one to go dormant, I think. It went dormant a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. Like the leaves fully dropped off at 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's obviously been dormant. This one was an import, but it obviously rooted as it grew this year. But get that one. This Catasetum over here. Here's another one of the same cross, just a different plant. So it's been an interesting dormancy so far, or fall so far. And of course this one, my Millennium Magic, didn't spike. I'm kind of sad about that. Hoping it will do it later, but it may not. And then there's Galliandras back there. So the signs of dormancy, obviously, for those who aren't familiar, one of the first things you'll tend to notice is lower leaves, especially, will start to yellow. This is normal, of course. A good example of it is obviously this Catasetum. Like I said, that leaf is starting to yellow. It's another one. Trying to find another one with a good obvious example on it. But I am not seeing one. Okay, well then these are not good examples for those anyway. But I guess this is the closest. This is the Cycnodes Hagii, and these leaves up here are starting to die back and yellow a little bit. But they'll do that first, and then all the leaves will just kind of fall off. These are a whole bunch of leaves that I removed from the ones that went dormant over the past couple weeks. And you want to slow down on your watering. And what I mean slow down is, like, for me anyway, and I've heard a lot of other growers say this, I cut off my fertilizer the moment they start to yellow, so no more fertilizer for them. But I will continue to water until they have fully gone dormant, but I will reduce the watering. So for me, my schedule, and it depends on your climate, but for me, in the humid subtropical zone that is the Houston area, I will half my watering by about Halloween, a quarter by mid-November, and then by the time December rolls around, I'm not watering them at all. Now, this is also subject to differences in the plants. Like, most of them will keep to their schedule pretty tightly, but like this Catasetum right here, Abigail Parsons cross Catasetum Spitzii, is putting out a new growth for some reason. It's not even shed off this one yet. So that one will probably get a different schedule. But these guys are all either dormant or very close. Like this Cloisia Rebecca Northern is shed its other growth completely, and this one has lost most of its leaves. It's only got a few left. And then the Galliandra Boweri has only got 2 left as well. So those guys are pretty much not getting watered at all, unless they wrinkle a lot. But these guys over here still get watered periodically. And even though the moss is pretty dry right now, they'll probably get water tomorrow or so. But catasetums tend to spike during their growth phase, like as the bulb is developing. Cloizias tend, not all of them, but generally Cloizias will spike after they drop their leaves, as will Fred Clarkiuras typically, depending on which ancestry is in them anyway. And then Cygnoches will spike with their leaves on, at least in my experiences so far they have, as will Cycnodes. I don't grow any more Modes, so I don't know how they purely are, but like this is Cygnodes Wine Delight, and it's in spike. It's pretty late, but it'll be fine. And so you're just looking to monitor the amount of water you're giving them. Once you see them start to yellow, you start cutting back. And you're doing this because you're mimicking the onset of the dry season that these plants normally would get in their natural habitat, or at least the ancestral species of these plants, because many of these are hybrids or line-bred species. And so they experience drier temperatures, or I mean drier conditions, a little bit lower temperatures, but not by much, and actually brighter conditions as trees around them shed some of their leaves. So I grow them in the winter. I'll grow them pretty bright and dry, but when you're looking to reduce it, you don't want to suddenly cut off their water. You give it just approximately to the schedule. I recommend following the approximation of the schedule I just gave. Half by October, half that again or to a quarter of total watering by mid-November, and cut it off by December. Obviously, take your plants into consideration if they're behaving a little bit differently, such as sprouting growth before they go dormant, or going dormant sooner than that. Adjust your watering. Don't keep them all to a tight schedule, because they won't keep to a tight schedule, more than likely. It's just how these plants are. So you just have to keep modifying as you go, but as you see them start to shed more and more leaves, you want to cut back the water more and more. As I said, no fertilizer either. They use the reason we fertilize them is so that they build big, strong bulbs and flower well. But if they're not flowering or growing, and their bulbs are mature and they're shedding, there's no need for the nutrients anymore, or that extra nutrients. So I cut off their fertilizer then, and I highly recommend the same. And then obviously once they get to like this phase where they're just completely dormant, you only want to water them, and just a little bit too, if these bulbs get really wrinkled through their dormancy. A little bit of wrinkling is fine. Like this is the older bulb right here, and it's slightly wrinkled, but it's still pretty plump and healthy. But if this bulb, the new one, got super wrinkly and soft, then I would give it a little bit of a drink. Otherwise, you want to keep them dry. And this varies on your humidity as well. Here in Houston area, we have no need to really water them too much. It's plenty humid. There's a cameo from Wilbur who is in my face and smelling really bad. Ew. We don't need to water them hardly ever, if at all, because of how humid it tends to be. But if you live in like a desert climate, or if you're growing in a space like I am actually, even though I'm in Houston where I have heating going, it tends to dry the air out, and so I tend to have to water them at least once or twice through the winter just to keep them plump and happy. We'll obviously do a video on when to water in the spring. But for now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about prepping your plants for dormancy. Something that I see people ask a lot, but I recommend against just because of the timing, is I see people repotting their plants in this time of year. Highly recommend against it. It's proven, at least in my experiences, so I'm not going to say it's a hard, solid fact, but I have found it to be much better and safer to do it over winter. When the plants go dormant, I do it over winter when growth begins. So once I see new growths begin to pop up, I will go through and repot them just before the roots start to come out, really, because if you wait too long, it'll be hard to repot them without damaging roots. So I would suggest waiting to repot until growth begins. Pardon. But otherwise, you just leave them in their pot, and water them less and less. Another thing I see that people do with their dormant catasetums, and I recommend against, because, well, it seems entirely pointless. It doesn't happen in nature, so why do we have to do it? is I see people cut the roots off of their dormant catasetums entirely, so they just have a bulb. The reason I advise against this is because, unlike a lot of them claim, those roots are not always dead. Catasetums do not always lose their roots and they have to regrow a completely new set. They will grow a new set every year, but the previous year's roots may not be dead. And I have seen that on quite a few plants to be the case. Like my Wine Delight up here, when this bulb was starting, back in the spring, I was repotting it into this bigger pot, and I noticed that several of the old last year's roots were still very healthy and alive, and even producing new root tips or continuing to grow off their old ones. So that's a prime example of why you shouldn't cut their roots off. Another good reason why I feel is, let's just say you watered too soon or something and you lost either the roots of your new growth or the new growth entirely due to rot or something. Your plant is no longer capable, at least until it tries again, capable of taking up water in fresh roots. So it's going to be relying on its storage more heavily still. But if you cut off all its roots, you're killing one of its fighting chances, I feel. Because, like I said, those roots are usually not always dead, and even if some of them are dead, not all of them tend to be. And so if you need to give it a bit of a drink to help keep it plumped while it tries again, you're not really going to be able to do that unless you have roots. And so I highly advise against cutting off the roots of your catasetums. The only time I ever do it is if I need to cut off a small portion, and it's usually the oldest part. Even though catasetum roots can grow for quite a bit and wrap around the pod as they grow and mature, I tend to take roots off of the oldest part of the root ball only if there's a need to. And so some like this, I may honestly, unless the moss breaks down even more, which I don't think it will because it's dry, I may not even repot this one at all because it's still got plenty of room to grow into. And it's a nice airy pot. Whereas others, like this one, I may need to repot. Or, let me find another good one. Well, this one for sure. This is my 2019 Catasetum project plant from High Desert Orchids. But this one for sure, it's filled up its pot, and it's even growing some basket roots, which is usually a sign of like needing nitrogen or something. But it's too late in the year to start feeding it again, and the bulb is mature, and it even dropped a leaf, so it's going dormant. There's no point in me feeding it now. But that's when you'd want to repot. But I wouldn't cut the roots off that. I would just slip it up into a bigger pot. So that's why I advise against, and often repeat to other people who might wonder why. That's why I advise against cutting the roots off, because you're taking away one of its biggest chances to survive, losing its growth. And if something happens to the roots but the growth is okay, well, you still don't have any roots. So you need the older roots, and so I strongly advise against taking them off. So I will be sure to do more videos on this, obviously, and this one's not over, I'm just saying, because these catasetums will start to continue to go dormant as well, and of course I'll want to document that. Some of them are most of the way there, like this is Catasetum tenebrosum from High Desert Orchids, and this is a beautiful new bulb that just matured, but it's only got 3 leaves left, so it's almost done. Some of them will do it more all at once, others will do it 1 leaf at a time and then kind of stay green for a while, then another leaf. They're looking for cooler, like drop in temperature and daylight change is really the main triggers I've noticed. A change of watering will affect them and trigger dormancy as well, as it is the reason they go dormant, but at least in my experiences so far, the first triggers that tend to happen that trigger it are a reduction in light during the day as the days shorten, and a drop in overall temperatures, both the high and the low. And so you want to keep these dormant ones, because they've already gone through that, you want to keep them dry, unless you absolutely have to give them a little bit of a watering, like I said. But that's really only in very low humidity places that ever becomes a concern. And so I just keep them over, I'll just keep them on a bright shelf, sometimes bring them upstairs, other times leave them here, and just kind of let them chill until growth begins. It could happen almost right away sometimes, especially in vigorous hybrids like Millennium Magic here. It may not stay dormant for long at all. And in fact, it's a hybrid that is known for not ever going dormant sometimes. It's such a complex hybrid and a vigorous hybrid that it may never go dormant for sometimes a few years, and then suddenly it decides it wants to. It'll just grow and grow, and then the old growth will shed, but the new growth is still growing. So yeah, I do hope this video was helpful for some of you at least, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to help when I get a chance to check them. I know I don't check them often enough, but I'm going to try. I will be sure to document more of these changes as they go, and of course, if you're a member of High Desert Orchids, look for a post from me in the coming days, as I will be making a Facebook post talking about Catasetum dormancy as well, using photographs and just kind of discussing in the post my reasonings for the things I do and why I recommend them. So keep an eye out for another video coming soon. I have not figured out what the next topic will be, admittedly, but it will be in the next week or so. So I do hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.